In 1999, the world was shocked and horrified by the Columbine High School massacre.
911. Yes, this is Sharon at Columbine High School. We have shots being fired. Okay. The guy is in a black trench coat. Jerry, there's one guy. They just shot somebody inside the cafeteria. I'm going to have to try and get out of here and call you back.
At the time, the massacre was the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history.
So as I pulled up, I couldn't even park on that street. There were so many cop cars parked there. And it was chaos. Everybody was running in different directions.
In the shooting's aftermath, people rushed to attribute the shooter's motivations.
Horrors like Columbine terrify us, and we need an explanation. So even if we don't have an answer, we find one. And we find it really too fast.
Bullying, social rejection, political terrorism, and video games were blamed.
And speculation about a black-coated mafia and its supposed grievances ran wild.
A gang that apparently hated athletes.
It was all because people were mean to him last year.
The trenchcoat mafia is more than just black clothes. These boys were dangerously strange.
Yet despite these various theories, no clear answer was ever determined. One person who was blamed for the massacre was controversial musician Marilyn Manson.
It was about being yourself and not being ashamed of being different or thinking different. I try and take everyone's ideals, common morals, flip them around, make people look at them differently.
In an interview for the film Bowling for Columbine, Manson reminded the world of the importance of not rushing to judgment.
If you were to talk directly to the kids at Columbine or the people in that community, what would you say to them if they were here right now?
I wouldn't say a single word to them. I would listen to what they have to say, and that's what no one did.
Listening is not just a skill for understanding motivations, but it could literally mean the difference between life and death.
The word negotiation itself implies conversation. When you have somebody telling you, come on out or we're coming in to get you, there's no opportunity to actually be heard. And when a person is in crisis, they want to be understood, they want to be validated, whatever it is.
In the book, Just Listen, Discover the Secret of Getting Through to Absolutely Anyone, Mark Goldstein discusses listening tactics he taught to the FBI for hostage negotiation. In this situation, your success hinges entirely on talking the person up from reptile to mammal to human brain. One absolutely crucial element in moving your brain from panic to logic is to put words to what you're feeling at each stage. Egos want us to speak. Narcissistic personality disorder is characterized by exaggerated feelings of self-importance and an excessive need for admiration. According to Psychology Today, there are 8 signs of a narcissistic communicator. The first 4 are 1. Hoarding conversation time, 2. Controlling conversation topic, 3. Frequent interruption, and 4. Unempathetic listening. The common thread between all these symptoms is an exaggerated sense of self-importance that moves the conversation away from the other person back to the narcissist. This does not mean that everyone who talks a lot is a narcissist, but when someone keeps bringing the conversation back to themselves, it is likely that this person has an inflated ego. Ego is the concept that is used to describe one's sense of self. It is what is meant by the word I. As the influence of the ego increases, then the focus of attention shifts to the I. In contrast, the concept of ego death, as used in spirituality, is described as a complete loss of subjective self-identity. A study at Ohio State University studied hundreds of organizations on the relationship between psychology and decision-making. One of the conclusions from the study was that more than 1/3 of all failed business decisions are driven by ego. By definition, objectivity asserts that one would look at their environment without attributing outsized importance to the self. This is difficult to do clearly because human beings were evolutionarily designed for survival and not for objectivity. Spiritual teacher Eckhart Tolle expressed his view on the ego in his talk, Did the Universe Make a Mistake with the Ego?
From a certain perspective, the ego may look quite insane. From a higher perspective, it is no more than part of the evolutionary process of the species. It's a stage in the evolution. And as we are approaching the next stage in the evolution, we are beginning to see that the ego has completely outlived its usefulness, but it had its usefulness.
With 8 billion human beings on the planet, an interconnected economy, and global challenges like war and energy, the fate of an individual is increasingly connected with the collective. These all-encompassing issues cannot be solved by isolated individuals, but by teams collaborating with multiple stakeholders across different cultures and geographies. The increasing complexity of society. The amount of information that someone needs to understand is a function of how complex the world is. For example, let's say there were only 2 people in the world. In this scenario, for someone to know all of the communication in the world, they would just need to know the one conversation between A and B. When we add a third person to the conversation, however, this number does not increase linearly, but rather exponentially. There would now be 3 conversations instead of 1, A to B, B to C, and C to A. If we bring this number to just 25 people, then the total number of conversations explodes to 300 in total. This increase in connections is formally described by the network topology formula, written as this. If everyone in the world were connected, that would be 32 quintillion conversations. Compare this to Dunbar's number of 150. Dunbar's number is a theoretical limit to the number of people with whom any individual is able to sustain a stable or meaningful relationship. That would be about 11,000 total connections. The structure of society itself is far beyond what the average human is designed to perceive. At a minimum, we need to spend a lot more time listening to be able to accurately perceive the world. 2 practical prescriptions here would be 1, travel more, and 2, listen to more people talk. By moving outside of our local reference frame, different cultures will expose us to categorically different ways of thinking. If we sample a larger part of the network, then we can build a more accurate view of humanity. Since humanity is so large and complex, there's practically no limit to how much we can learn by traveling and listening. Standing on the shoulders of giants. Andrew Busquel from the London School of Economics writes about the concept of cumulative culture. Academics are now attempting to understand how and why humans establish and maintain technology and knowledge over time. The label that they use to capture this phenomenon is cumulative culture. A person in the modern world would look around and see many innovations that required historical geniuses to create. These innovations, however, do not require that much thought to interact with. Someone could open an internet browser with the click of a button, flick a light switch, or take antibiotics by swallowing a pill. Let's take a look at just one historical genius, Alan Turing. Turing is considered the inventor of the modern computer. In the movie The Imitation Game, Benedict Cumberbatch portrays the life and struggle of Turing.
Of course, machines can't think as people do. A machine is different from a person, hence they think differently.
It is believed that Turing had Asperger's syndrome and an IQ of 185, putting him in the 99.9th percentile of intelligence.
The interesting question is, just because something thinks differently from you, does that mean it's not thinking?
Turing lived a life of struggle and hardship to build the world's first computer.
All my friends, they're all making a difference while we just while away our days producing nothing. Because of you.
My machine will work.
Despite Turing's genius, a modern-day iPhone is about 4 billion times faster than Turing's invention. Today's modern human lives atop many, many layers of innovation. There are millions of exceptionally rare geniuses such as Turing who left their inventions behind. With each layer that is added, there is more information that someone alive today can advantage themselves by knowing about it. If there was some apocalyptic event in which all of humanity's innovations were erased, there's nothing to suggest that civilization would be rebuilt any faster than it did before.
The roads are peopled by refugees towing carts and gangs carrying weapons, looking for fuel and food.
The knowledge and innovation available to a person today is a gift from thousands of years of contribution by civilization. Read more books. It took me about 6 years to read 300 nonfiction books at the rate of 1 book a week. My thesis for this initiative was principled on these 2 ideas. 1, my thinking could be improved if I exposed myself to the greatest thinkers in different subjects. And 2, there are people with 30 or more years of knowledge on a subject that I could learn in 300 to 400 pages. If there's an underlying feeling that could describe why I did this, it would be the feeling of feeling exposed. For example, I was relatively light on biology knowledge until I read the book The Secret Language of Cells: What Biological Conversations Tell Us About the Brain-Body Connection by John Leaf. After reading this one book, I realized there was an entire world of knowledge of which I had no idea. There are probably hundreds or thousands of biology books I could read after this and still continue to learn. Every time I found a good book, I uncovered more and more that I did not know. While 300 books may seem like an impressive credential, in my experience, I would say that this is more a bare minimum to start to have an idea about the modern world. There are about 457 billion nonfiction books that exist. I would say that 1,000 books would be a better number, if not for the fact that it would take 20 years of reading one book a week to get there. There is practically no limit to how much you can learn by reading books. The cumulative output of civilization is available to you at any time, just waiting to be uncovered. Attack or defend. The I Ching is a 3,000-year-old Chinese manual of divination with 64 hexagrams. The use of the I Ching describes the energetic conditions of a given situation, highlighting the choice, passive action, and open possibilities. The idea behind the I Ching is that if the reading says that it is not favorable to advance, then an attempt to advance could result in disaster. The I Ching is a way to listen to the energetic currents and respond appropriately. Even without divination methods, we should use our intuition to gauge appropriate actions given the context. For example, in sales, being pushy at the wrong time could backfire. An article in Harvard Business Review, Why Nudging Your Customers Could Backfire, states that nudges that are poorly thought out could be ticking time bombs waiting to explode and damage the company's reputation and credibility among its loyal customers. Walking in the wrong direction. On the day that I was writing the content for this video, I had plans to have dinner with a friend. I was rushing to finish the content before meeting my friend, and I didn't read my friend's update correctly. I ended up walking 10 minutes in the wrong direction, and then when I got to the wrong address, I had to walk another 10 minutes back in the right direction. How many times in our lives have we gotten into the wrong relationship, worked in the wrong career, or lived in the wrong location? While it's not always possible to know in the beginning, often the signs are there. These are the infamous red flags that can be hard to accept. I once met a man in his mid-40s who told me that he had been married for 20 years. After 20 years of marriage, he realized he was gay and ended the marriage. Similarly, I once met someone in middle age who spent all of their career as a lawyer, but now was doing a career change. Could these people have realized these major changes sooner with more reflection and self-honesty? I would like to highlight that even as I was writing content about the power of listening, I still managed to overlook the details of my meeting. The power of listening is not a fact to be learned in memory, but rather a practice to be exercised. Even if someone knows that listening is a good idea, the practice of listening needs to be continuously embodied. In Action Reveals the Truth, we talked about how only through action do we discover what is true. This, however, does not mean one should rush to action without proper reflection. Conclusion. Listening is a powerful force. Here we just barely scratch the surface of its importance. In a world of increasing complexity and information overload, there are myriad benefits to slowing down and listening before speaking. Only by listening and paying close attention can we respond to the world with correct action.